Hi, and welcome to Master's Choice Podcast, episode 12. Thanks for joining us today. We hope that you are finding these podcasts not only informative, but, somewhat entertaining, and glad that you've decided to join us and listen through. Today, in studio, my co-host is Lynn Crabtree.
Morning, Mark.
Good morning. Owner, chief cook and bottle washer, everything. In fact, yesterday, we were out in the field together. I was helping Cullen plant, and then and you were out actually spraying some herbicide down, weren't you?
I was, yeah, sure was, and little windier than I wanted, but I think we did all right.
I think we did all right. About noon, we kind of you kind of shut her down, and
Well, you kind of shut down at noon. I sprayed all the rest of the afternoon.
well, hey, listen, we had 2 more boxes of seed to plant, 3 more boxes of seed to plant. It was 11:45. I was like, why start on another box and miss that 12 o'clock lunch,
Yeah.
So absolutely. No, so that is one of the things about working with Master's Choice that I really enjoy is not only do I get to travel all over the place and talk, but I also get to, with nutrition research and work with Cullen, but I get to be in the office with the boss almost every day that I'm in the office. So and then in the field sometimes too. So it's an awesome environment to work in.
It's kind of a I don't know. To me, it's a credit to our staff and to the people that make up Master's Choice that yes, we've got people that can be that could be on equipment and do all those things, and you wouldn't have to be out there planting. I wouldn't have to be out there spraying, but we want to be,
Yes,
and we want to be connected with everything that's going on, and we want to be a part of everything that's going on, and we want that firsthand knowledge of how production's being fulfilled and how R&D is being developed, and all those things. So it's very much a credit to the staff of people that we've got that they're so engaged in that manner, because we had a business manager, we had sales manager, we had R&D director, and head plant breeder, on one planting block at the same time, out there. Yeah,
absolutely. And like I said, we didn't all have to be there, but we got to be there and just kind of got to see how that all works and do it. And you and I think we're enough alike that any hour on the tractor spent is never a bad hour.
I hear that.
It's never a bad hour. So, one of the things for us, Lynn, is that we are a company focused on livestock nutrition and a lot in the dairy industry.
Yes.
A lot of the corn that we have is sold, probably 90-something% is sold for silage or high moisture corn, something along those lines that's going to go into dairy feed. And so you and I, we're pretty steeped in that idea and love that and love being able to work with Cullen to be able to breed and select hybrids for that end use, and looking for other avenues and options. So one of the things I was listening to a radio program this week, and one of the things that I found interesting is and I don't remember all of the numbers completely, but it was something like this, okay? Over the past, 50, 60 years, milk consumption per person in the United States has almost gone in half. And I think it was, if you look back in the 40s and 50s, milk consumption per person was somewhere around 30 gallons per person a year. And now we're down to about 18 gallons per person a year. And they were really kind of talking about some of those reasons. And it was really kind of an interesting thing for me to just listen to that. And so basically their point was, there are so many other options of things to drink. We're not the oldest tools in the shed, you and I, right? but
well, you're not.
I'm not, but we are, they kind of lump us in the same canoe here. But when you were a kid, what kind of drinks did you have in the refrigerator? I mean, what was there to drink?
No, there was three choices. You drank water out of the tap, or you had milk or orange juice.
Yeah.
And you didn't have all the energy drinks. You didn't have all of the sodas. You didn't have all of the. I mean, walk into the Quick Mart store. The 7-Eleven, and the walls are lined with coolers with drink options.
Exactly. I can remember sitting down at the dinner table, and Mom said, you want milk, water, or tea? You know,
Tea, yeah, iced tea.
yeah,
That's it.
and then for breakfast it was milk,
Milk,
water, or orange juice.
yeah.
And but now kind of milk has become kind of that breakfast drink more than anything.
Hmm.
There was a time so granddaddy, he'd sit down at night and he'd get a big old glass of buttermilk before he went to bed. I don't know anybody that really drinks. By the way, I'm not a fan of buttermilk myself, except when it's in biscuits. But but used to there are a lot of people that would drink milk for breakfast and lunch and even for supper and even after that. And now it's kind of become just the breakfast thing. And so it was interesting that milk consumption per person was down, but when we look at overall milk production, okay, when we look at overall milk production in the U.S., we are still increasing that production year to year. All right. And one of the interesting things is but it's starting to slow down. Okay, that milk production is starting to slow down. But have you noticed that cow numbers are up?
Yes. It kind of the whole thing with milk price has always been difficult for me to follow, and it's been it's been somewhat political, and when you include all the factors, all of the export segments, when you look at how segmented the milk industry is, and what's hot, what's not, some of the moms are concerned about high fat or milk or calorie content in the milk, and so we're skim milk or water or what is the staple of what we're putting on the table today. The pizza craze is tapered a little bit. Where cheese price is probably fairly stagnant right now. Yeah. Exports are a mixed bag, probably up a little bit. But you're right. Milk production has slowed, even though it's up. Milk production has slowed a little bit. Yeah. But milk per cow is down. So interesting listening to analysts describe what they are seeing there, and then of course we've been all around the country and we're seeing a lot of things. And so can't speak for what all of the analysts' opinions are, but I guess it could speak a little bit to what we have seen.
Right.
So what are some of the things that you've seen that would?
So one of the things that's really kind of interesting to me is there seems to be like a shuffling of cows, right? Cow numbers. We talk about cow numbers are up by several thousand, across the United States, but they're down in some places. I think one of the places they're most down is California. Mm-hmm. But yet those cows are going. They've got to be going somewhere else, and also gaining. And I think what we've seen in California is a saturation of the land base there. They've definitely had water problems. There's lots of regulation, and so a lot of times those guys are just, hey, there's easier places to go dairy.
Sure.
And so they do. One of the other interesting things that I've seen traveling around is consolidation, for lack of a better word. That some of the bigger dairies are kind of absorbing the smaller dairies, and dairy herd size is getting larger.
Yeah.
And so whereas we may say somebody has 80,000 cows, but he doesn't have 80,000 cows in one location.
Right. Multiple farms.
Multiple farms, although they may be kind of in the same region, but
kind of hard to put the land base together for a 3,000 cow herd.
Absolutely. Yeah, because what are we thinking? If I've got 3,000 to 5,000 cows, how many acres of ground do I have to have? Just kind of roughly to be able to feed that.
Yeah, well, more than that, more acres than cows. So we're looking at 10,000 acres or better, even when we're bringing in a lot of the feedstuffs from off the farm. So that's a pretty big land base to be able to. We think about that as owning, but it's probably just more managing or controlling. Some cooperators are doing some work for us, but difficult to manage.
It would be difficult to manage, and so it's California's dropping. There's other places that are growing. One of the other places, a couple of the places are kind of the Southwest, Texas, New Mexico. Mm-hmm. They're growing in cow numbers. Of course, Texas and New Mexico kind of had that die off with a major. It was a freeze. It was a big blizzard that came through, and so their numbers are kind of kind of fluctuating that way. But as you know, as a whole, we're all up in numbers. Now, we could do a lot of speculation and a lot of ideas. But why do I wonder why this is just kind of one of those things. Wonder why milk production is slowing, in the U.S.
Well, you've got the maybe it's obvious because a lot of people are talking about it, but you had here in Southern Illinois, we had a mild winter.
Yeah.
But there was a tough winter in a lot of the Northwest, and weather had to affect milk production in those areas, and of course people are talking about that. One of the things that I've seen is that there's been more of a shift over the last few years to look at feeding efficiency,
Mm-hmm.
and we used to, and we still have a lot of nutritionists. And I'm not saying what's right or wrong here, because there's right and wrong may look different for any individual farm
Sure.
or group of cows or nutritionist. But used to be the higher that we could. I mean, everything was about highest peak milk production.
Right.
The higher we could get milk to peak, the longer we could hold the lactation curve, the more milk we'd make, the more money we'd make.
Right.
And we begin to look over the last few years, I think, at feeding efficiency, where we're looking at what does it cost to produce that 100-weight of milk, and we have gone away from heavier grain feeding and been reliant more on new forages.
Yeah.
and producing forage that made milk and increasing that forage to grain ratio in our diets, maybe and perhaps to the detriment of a little bit of peak efficiency in terms of milk production,
Yeah.
but not necessarily in terms of cost of production. So,
Yeah. I think one of the most interesting phrases that I ever heard talking about being efficient was, you can either to be more profitable on a farm, you can either try to create more production or better productivity. So production would be the overall volume, right? I can try to make more milk. If I get more milk, then I get more dollars, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if I don't become productive in that, okay, so if I don't become efficient in that, then I may be getting a bigger check at the end of the day, but I'm not making as much profit, okay? So maybe it should be production over profitability. And we've really got to be able to look at profitability and say, how efficiently can I do this? Can I feed less and get the same amount of production? Can I feed a little more and make sure that I'm getting greater production? And then I see a lot of guys also chasing components a lot.
Yeah.
And so trying to make up for some of that. And we know that there's a kind of a correlation there. If I increase components, I would like to increase overall fluid volume, but a lot of times that doesn't happen.
Sure. I think that if we had our director of finance, Alex Feller, in
Yep.
here today, he would tell us that the best way to create profit and create margin is to generate more profit, generate more sales, generate more income. And I understand that completely.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of our producers, have looked at milk price.
Right.
And when milk price is $22, or if milk price is $15, $16, it's psychologically got a big impact on how we're going to go about purchased inputs, and so I think that there's been an inclination on a lot of producers to feed more forage, a little more efficiency, a little less purchased inputs, and try to create more dollars in terms of feeding efficiency rather than just peak milk.
Yeah, I would completely agree. I would completely agree with that. I think sometimes we too much try to chase a bigger check at the end of the day and not kind of cut back spending. I mean, if I can cut back spending, I will still end up with more money in the bank than if if you would write me a bigger check next week.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, but so I think that is an interesting perspective. So we're seeing cow numbers somewhat up, but we're still seeing a little bit. Not that we're not seeing milk production up, but we're seeing a slowdown in milk production. And so here's some things that I was thinking through this, Lynn. If you could just what would be the top three or maybe even five, okay, top three things to increase increase production or maybe even profitability on a dairy farm? What would you say? So if a guy called you in, you used to be a dairy consultant. If a guy called you in and said, "Look, I need some help making more money," what would be some of the first things that you would look at?
One of the by far,
Okay.
when I was a dairy consultant on farm, by far the main culprit to profitability was cull rate.
Okay.
And my Southern Illinois speech gets confused. Our cull, C-U-L, cull,
Yeah.
it does cull
Yeah.
rate, and I'm not sure that is as big a deal as it used to be, because in those days, and I'm talking about 30 years ago, we were feeding a lot of grain, a lot of corn going into cow diets. We had we had starch levels in the diet that would approach and exceed 30%. Today it's not as big a deal. Guys are telling me that they're feeding a lot of cows in that 20 to 24% starch range.
Yep.
So we've got a lot more forages going into the diet. A lot more effective fiber going into cows, a lot healthier cow, and so cull rate is probably not as big a deal. But back then, when we had 25% heifers in a herd, that was well managed. But average in those days was 50 to 60% heifers in a herd. Now you figure that out. Somebody's got to be raising heifers for replacements, because I couldn't raise all the heifers on my farm and put them back in the herd fast enough for that. So that was always the biggest thing. So I'm not absolutely sure where we're at today overall, but I do know that if a farm has a high cull rate, that it's a very, very difficult thing to overcome, and it's going to affect your profitability in deeply. So that would be my number one.
So am I thinking right on this? A cow doesn't really become profitable until 1.5 or 2 lactations.
Well, it used to be more than that, but
Okay.
you may be right, because I haven't kept up with the numbers. But yeah, you've got you're producing her, and she's in her average life was a little over 2 years or 2 lactations there, and you were barely
breaking even on her.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. So cull rates would be one area for a guy to look at. What would another area be?
Cull rate, Mark, is the thing that we generally always looked at first, but there's several reasons. You had to discover the culprit for the cull rate, and a lot of the things that we were finding with that, as we begin to sort through this and looking at ways that we can be more efficient with the dairy, was that we weren't looking at the other areas of herd management.
Okay.
We were concerned about trying to bring in a nutritionist that would help us balance, the lactation, our lactating cows, but we were not paying enough attention to heifers. We were not paying attention to our dry cow periods. For example, that heifer, she needs to be bred on time. Mm-hmm. She needs not be gaining too much weight. She needs to be gaining enough weight so that she can adequately develop the frame under her that she's going to need to be able to be a maximum producing cow, not a squat fatty cow, not a thin cow at freshening. And so we needed to be looking at balancing those things. And at every step during that 2-year period of developing a heifer, we needed to be controlling her dietary gains, and we needed to manage that. And the feedstuffs that we were feeding heifers was the leftover stuff from the lactating herd.
How many times have you heard, "Oh, that's just heifer feed"?
Yeah.
Meaning that's the lowest quality stuff we have, and that's just junk.
Exactly. So that heifer may have been may have been gaining a half or 3/4 of a pound a day when she was on the trash, and then we
Right.
put her out on some fresh pasture in the spring. She's gaining 3 to 4 pounds a day.
Yeah.
You know, and I guess they said all averages out, but what did Tom Kilser say? Your head in the oven and your feet in the deep freeze, and it all averages out. You know,
Yeah.
not so.
No.
In terms of way we were developing our heifers, and it's too big of a deal, you know, in terms of a cow, and creates too heavily for a cull rate.
It is. It
on
is.
those cows.
And so Mike Van Amberg did some work, probably several years ago now, where he looked at, you know, feeding heifers high quality and low quality diets, even starters, even calf starters.
You bet.
And even way back, you know, in the first few weeks of life, and how much difference that made in the first lactation.
Yep.
And that could really be the difference between being profitable or not profitable if that heifer is making enough, you know, even her first lactation to start to catch up for that economic deficiency that she's always going to have, because you're feeding her for 2 years before she ever really goes into any kind of lactation or any production mode.
Dave Casper did an interesting study at South Dakota State University when he was there, and he was looking at absorption.
Yeah.
You know, and all they did was change the grain in the starter diets, and the absorption of those calf starters was incredibly different, and got those calves off to so much of a better start, you know. So those are the things that I'm talking about in terms of herd management, where we're looking at heifer development, managing that, keeping it just as fine-tuned as we would our lactating diets. And then look at dry cows. I mean, we can really screw them up in the dry cow period, and we can create all kinds of metabolic issues, and we have sick cows when they freshen, and we get a lot of cows that drop out during that period of time. So, you know, herd management is a huge issue, and paying attention to the whole picture, not just the milking string, you know, but we got to pay attention to how we're bringing those cows on, how we're developing during the dry period, timely breeding, all those kind of things to keep that machine functioning at a high level.
No doubt.
So herd management, I think, is probably the second thing that I'd mention.
Okay, so we got cull rates.
Yes.
We got herd management.
Yes.
So what's the third?
Well, another thing that can kind of contribute to some of that cull rate thing, but is a big issue is facility management.
Okay.
You know, we've notoriously over the years mismanaged some of our facilities. Today, I think we're doing a much better job of that. I think a lot of our consultants now are much better prepared to making recommendations for bunk management, for our loafing spaces, you know, for the kinds of things that are going to create ultimate cow comfort.
Right.
You know, so that we got cows that are really feeling good and are fed well and coming in and really doing their thing for us.
Definitely, because you know we know we overcrowd. They, you know, the dominant cows push out the less dominant cows. The less dominant cows don't get to eat as much. Dry matter intake goes down. Cow comfort, you know, if they're not getting enough loafing time and resting time, they don't feel good. They're not at their peak. They're not going to have peak production. One of the interesting things that just kind of sparked in my mind, you know, we're talking about facilities, and sometimes we think about, you know, those, you know, bunk space and not overcrowding. There was a facility that I won't mention I won't mention where it is, but anyway, there was a facility that its cows should have been producing more, and they couldn't figure out exactly what was going on. And there was somebody there trying to help and say, look, there's a problem here, and nobody would listen. After he left, they went in and looked, and they had some stray voltage in their barn. And so some of the wiring was all messed up, stray voltage, and they got some of that fixed. Cow production went back up, or milk production went back up. And so sometimes it's just those unseen kind of things that we just really need to be paying attention through. How are all of these things working in our facility? So cull rate, herd management, facility management, especially focusing on cow comfort, in anything else.
Well, let's just not forget and kind of close with this with feed management.
Okay.
You know, starts in the field. You know, we've got to have a cropping plan. We've got to understand where it's coming from.
Okay.
You know, some of the best farms that I always worked with were two brothers.
Right.
And one was a cow guy, and one was a crop guy.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and they knew their place, and they didn't interfere with each other's field of expertise. But you need that cropping plan. It starts there and follows all the way through to facility management. You know, where we're adequately protecting the investment that we've got in the forages that we've
Right.
grown or purchased, or the commodities that we've purchased. You know, that we've got top quality feeds that are going into the TMR at the end of the day.
Yep.
And so that's an elongated process that we need to make sure that we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's all along the way, whether we are on land that we own and we are managing our crops and timely harvesting of those crops and proper rotations on the land, or whether that's contracted feedstuffs that we're having grown for us and purchased. We need to be involved with that process and a little more invested there, so that we've got nothing but top quality feed at the time that it gets to the cow.
Yes. And so I think, one of the things that the guys sometimes forget is, if I've got healthy soils, I'm going to have healthier plants. Healthier plants are going to be are going to have more nutrient value to them.
Sure.
And so sometimes they just forget about that and looking at yield and only yield, whereas we've got to be looking at quality of that. But what about inventories? What about inventory of that corn silage? There's a lot of guys that have a year, 2 years worth of inventory. Well, that's money that's sitting there not doing anything.
Exactly right. And a lot of the studies were saying that we wanted our corn silage to ferment for a year before we fed them. I think that you and I would agree that probably 8 or 9 months in fermentation is gonna cause that corn silage to peak. It's getting pretty darn good after 6 or 7 months, but 8 or 9, it's the grain, the
Yes.
starch, not the fiber.
Right. Fiber's going to stay the same. What you put in the bunk is going to be what you get out of the bunk, however long.
You're not going to make it better in fermentation.
No.
If you mismanage the harvest date,
Yep.
For whatever reason, and it got too mature and you're losing fiber digestibility, it isn't going to get any better during fermentation. But the grain will, the starch will.
Yes.
And so during fermentation, we feel like that, we've got to have 2 years corn silage supply on hands to be able to manage the digestibility of that starch. And that's a huge drain on our cash flow.
It is.
And when we're talking about farm efficiency, I mean, that's a big deal.
Those are no doubt. Well, so Lynn, we're gonna have a guest. He won't be in studio. Brendan Blanc, one of our elite dealers, is going to call in, kind of talk about milk markets in his area. He's in southeast Wisconsin. Going to be talking about some of the things going on there that he's seeing with milk production and just kind of milk prices there. And so we'll get him on the line. Brendan, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate you calling in. So just to kind of tell us, you're one of our elite dealers, and you are in southeast Wisconsin. Kind of tell us what's going on in Wisconsin today.
Today, everybody's looking at the weather radar, hoping it doesn't rain again, so they can get a little bit more seed in the ground.
Right.
There's been an awful lot of that going on this spring. Not seed in the ground, watching the radar and watching the rain.
Been there, done that. We absolutely understand that. So I was up there last week, and really, I was kind of surprised at how much corn was kind of in the ground, and a lot of guys working dirt.
Yeah, we had a good stretch here, but it was a late stretch, and basically just kind of last week is when things kind of started. But mostly that, if you're doing any kind of deep tillage, but that was tough because you're pulling up a lot of moisture. But to get the top couple inches dry, that was doable.
No doubt. Hey, so Lynn is in studio with us today, Brendan, and we've been kind of talking about milk production. We've been talking about productivity and efficiencies and some of those things. Kind of tell us what you're seeing as far as milk production in your area, and just kind of the milk market and how those things are going there.
Well, the milk production, milk market has been kind of a hot topic in the neighborhood here as of late. You guys probably heard the Grassland Dairy situation beginning back in April. There were about 75 farms kind of in the area that got a letter saying as of the 1st of May, we're not going to be taking your milk anymore, and you got to find someplace else to take your milk. So that was a shock to a lot of people's livelihoods.
No doubt.
And then when it came time to try and find somebody else to take your milk, that was another shock, because everybody is basically all the milk plants are at maximum capacity. And that was a struggle.
Did you have any guys directly affected by that?
I had probably about a half dozen farms that were impacted by that. A lot of them were, kind of sitting, basically saying, I don't know if I'm going to plant silage corn. I don't know if I'm going to have alfalfa. I don't know if there's going to be cows here. And so we kind of sat on a lot of stuff, orders, and just kind of waited and see what's going to happen. Most of them got, pretty much all the farms. There were a few farms that didn't get picked up. A lot of them got picked up very, very last minute. Kind of with like right at the end of April, there were some guys that were culling their herds, getting rid of some of the bottom end cows, partly thinking, well, if all of a sudden there's thousands of cows on the market, even cull cows are going to be worthless. So there was some culling that went on that way. A couple herds I know did sell out earlier in the month, basically because they found some other dairies that they could raise heifers for. So they had another source. They thought, well, I better take advantage of that right away. But it was a struggle, and it didn't matter how big the farm was. Pretty much everybody within in the region, basically, like, they kind of drew a perimeter and said everybody in this area is getting cut off.
Wow. The farms that did get picked up, like, two questions there. The farms that did get picked up, are they getting good milk prices, or did they cut milk prices? And then was there kind of like a reason why, this one got picked up before this one?
Yeah. Depending on the milk plant that picked them up, varied a little bit on prices. Some of the ones that a new appreciation got put on milk quality during this, because the farms that had good components, low cell count, high quality milk were easier to pick up. There was more of a demand for that, for some of the specialty cheese markets and that type of stuff.
Sure.
So those are the ones that got picked up the fastest. Okay. And so really put a big value that basically, I think, put a new appreciation for everybody on how important milk quality is. And it is very important. I mean, that's kind of what the whole industry, no matter what you're producing, quality is a big topic.
Sure.
For consumers and everybody right now.
Yeah.
But milk price, some of them are getting a little bit lower price. That they're actually, we talk about milk quality being a valuable thing, but yet some of these farms that got picked up, they're now, some of the ones that didn't have the really good quality are not getting premiums for the quality that they have with some of these pickups. And basically they've got a 6-month contract with the milk plant that picked them up, saying, all right, we'll carry you over for 6 months. If you can find somebody else to take you in 6 months,
wow.
Great. So it's not even a completely, it allows these farms to keep going, but there's still a little bit of uncertainty there. I think by the time 6 months comes around, things will be kind of sorted out. I know there's some milk plants, processing plants getting built that'll be up and running. That'll support a little bit more capacity.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a struggle, and guys are looking at things differently. Some of them are like, well, I don't need to produce more milk. I just need to produce it as cheap as possible, and because if they don't want more milk, but it's still, to be the most profitable, you want to produce as much milk per cow. If you can do it, you can produce the same amount of milk with fewer cows. It's going to be more profitable too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a lot of sweat and turmoil.
No doubt. So just a kind of a loaded question, Brendan. Some of the farms that you're dealing with, maybe some of those higher quality milk producing farms. What are some of the reasons why they were higher quality milk?
Higher quality milk most often comes down to management and attention to detail. Just the somatic cell kind of in particular, it's having clean cows, having comfortable cows, not overcrowding, good milking procedures, that type of stuff. The stuff that takes a little bit extra time, every day, but just shows up in a healthier
healthier
cow.
Yeah, healthier herd, healthier cow.
Healthier, happier cow.
Yeah,
and better, clean
and better quality milk.
Yeah.
Hi, Brandon. This is Lynn. How's Katie and the girls?
Doing good.
Good. Hey,
very good.
You, without knowing it, you just echoed the things that Mark and I have been talking about when we're looking at herd efficiency and some of the things that we can do to be more profitable on the farm. So that was pretty interesting. You just talking about cell count, that being the somatic cell being kind of the indicator of the other things that we've already done to make the herd more efficient and effective.
Oh,
yeah,
good.
Yeah. So
good to hear.
you nailed it. You nailed it. This means that you're as smart as Lynn and I. Almost.
Congratulations.
Almost. Yeah. Good for you, right? Great.
Does my gold pin come in the mail, or?
Yeah.
Or a sticker, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's in the mail.
It's
buddy.
in the mail for sure.
Right.
It's in the mail for sure. So Brendan, we appreciate you calling in. We appreciate you sharing your information. Anything else that you want to kind of wrap up there with? Any other observations that you've seen in your area that maybe you want to finish up with as we conclude the call?
Well, I think, without getting too terribly off the topic, but one thing I kind of keep stressing with people, we're talking cows and cow comfort and stuff here, and how a healthy environment produces a healthier cow. I've been kind of trying to echo that with people with their planting stuff too, and relating to soil conditions. And a healthy soil, good soil condition produces a healthier plant. And just being patient with the rain we're having, not trying to mud stuff in and just say, oh, I got to get this in because the calendar says so, and just waiting for, just like the cows produce better when they're comfortable and in a good environment, so does all the crops you're growing. And so kind of trying to do some parallels there, and just help guys, telling them be patient and try and do things the way is the right way to do it, instead of just doing it to get it done.
Good deal. There you go again, echoing some other thoughts that we've had earlier without you even knowing it. So they're just proving once again, you're just as smart as we are.
Our listeners are going to think that we will have colluded on this before we spoke, and we absolutely did not.
We did not. Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, Brendan, thanks for calling in. We really appreciate you calling in. We appreciate you for what you do for Master's Choice and your knowledge, bud. So you and the family take care, and we'll probably see you soon sometime. Thanks, Brendan.
All right.
Bye, Brendan.
All right.
Yeah, bye.
So, Lynn, what an interesting call with Brendan. Just
folks are going to think that we would already prepped him, that because of the way that he kind of echoed the sentiments and the things that we had talked about. But I guess we're all singing off the same song.
I guess we really are, and really what we told him was, hey, talk about what you're seeing in milk production in your area and talk about milk markets. That was kind of what we told him to do, and he just nailed those things, and so. So really, really appreciate that. As we wrap this up, as we finish up, anything else that you think our listeners need to know? Just some kind of final thought that you've got.
I think that it just reiterates that, what our producers have been kind of looking at here for the last period of time. Milk price is hard. You tighten that belt and you look at any measure of efficiency that you can come up with. Different folks are looking at it in different ways. You'd be very grateful that you've got somebody that you're providing milk for. Instead of finding out here, 1st of May we're not picking your milk up. That'd be kind of tough.
That would be tough.
A lot of the things that we can control, we need to be at them, and folks know that.
Yep.
And they're doing a good job with it.
Hey, we thank you for joining us today for MC Podcast episode 12. I want to thank Lynn and Brendan for being in the studio, or Brendan for calling in. So as always, you can find us on YouTube. Our website is seedcorn.com. You can look us up. You can find us on Instagram, and so we Facebook. So we appreciate you guys, and thanks for tuning in today.